Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Women in Trades, the 4%. Today, we're going to do things a little bit different. We are going to have our normal episode and let our guest introduce herself and tell us her story. And then at the end, I'm going to share a few stories that women have sent in anonymously for me to share that they would otherwise maybe not be comfortable sharing with their face, but they just feel like it could be important information for other women wanting to join trades to hear. So we are going to get right into the good stuff today. I have Spooky Dimes here with me. She is a welder and a welded art fabricator. And we're going to let her tell us her story and how she got into her trade.
For sure. So I had no idea that I was going to be a welder. I mean, I think very, very few of us set out to do that. And those who, have that drive so early on, I do envy because I'm 28 and I didn't get into my trade on a real like structural professional level until I was like 25, 24. But so I went to college at CU Boulder. I was a declared art major and psych major. CU Boulder has an incredible art building. Like they have a wood shop, ceramics, metal shop, 3D printing, cast making, mold making, all that jazz. But when I had my first metal shop class, I was like, oh my God, like this is what I want to do. And originally I had set out to go to college to be an art therapist, but it took me 6 years to finish my undergrad, my 2 degrees and my minor. And I'm honestly not crazy about academia. Like I was like, I don't want to go get a master's or a doctorate after this. Like, what do I do? And during my last couple of years at CU, I had this one professor who introduced me to an artist who lived a little bit north of Boulder. And I worked with her for about a year and a half. I welded a piece for Burning Man, and that was so badass.
That's awesome.
Yeah, but unfortunately, of course, it was 2021, and so that was the year COVID prevented Burning Man from happening, and so I didn't get to go. But the piece was built, and so the company that had commissioned it from us had a private gathering of like their burner camp out in California, and so we drove the art out there, and I got to meet that whole camp, and it was just absolutely amazing. And some of them are like real characters, And what's really, really exciting is they asked me to build and collab with that same artist this year.
That's
And I
awesome.
actually just got word that, my road to Burning Man is completely confirmed. My ticket is secured. My camp fees are paid for. Like it's really happening this year. And it's something that I've wanted to do since high school. And so that's really cool. And
I
that
love that for
artist,
you.
thank you. I'm like over the moon about it, honestly. And then that artist introduced me to a gentleman who owned his own shop up north, like by Loveland, Colorado. And that shop specialized in bronze casting, aluminum casted, stainless casted sculptures. And so I worked for him for probably about 2 years. And during that time, I decided to go to trade school because the same professor who introduced me to that artist introduced me to this female welder who was an instructor at Emily Griffith in Denver. And so I did the 9 month program as her student and ironically enough left my trade school cohort, like I think when I only had 2 months left and went back to work for the shop that I currently work for now that specializes in large scale public art. And she gave me a call when I finished trade school and was like, yo, I can't give you this job if you don't apply. So I need you to send this application. And that shop is one that I've had my eye on since I was 20. I've kind of beeline straight after college and was like, I'm going to work with the shop because there's a couple of shops in Denver that specialize in large scale public art, but nobody really does what we do on the scale that we do it. And so at this point in my career, I know 6 different processes. I've welded and I wrote it down because I wanted to get all my facts.
Yeah,
15 different electrodes. I passed 7 structural tests, 4 of which were in school, 2 I purchased for myself, and then 1 my current shop owns. And my shop right now is honestly an anomaly. Like we are pretty 50-50 men and women, and we've actually outnumbered the men in technically trained welders. So like for our fab team, there's only 11 of us. 5 are women, 6 are male. There are 3 female technically trained welders, including myself, and then there's 3 male technically trained welders, and then we have I'd say about four people who are like learning to weld in the shop, but didn't go to trade school and aren't really the ones who are taking the cert tests for the shop and stuff, but they're still learning, which is cool. And so I've been really lucky, I think, in my experience, like a lot of the people I just mentioned in that timeline of like finding where I want to be in my career were female mentors and like
Yeah.
powerhouses who like really knew what they were doing. And that's something that like has been really inspiring and really, really cool to be a part of. Also, I was very, very lucky to have a very safe space to learn the trade. Like, I didn't really experience any sexual harassment in school. I didn't really experience any no, I verbatim didn't experience any sexual harassment in my current shop. Like, my team is absolutely incredible, and we
Yeah.
support each other. Like, the only time I've ever really experienced sexual harassment is on like other job sites. And it's like because we have our crew, who is mostly women, coming onto a site with like electricians, landscapers, laborers, contractors, and they see us. And it's like, not only are we a crew of mostly women, but we're like, oh, they're just here installing art. Like they're not real laborers. They're not real whatever. And I remember this was like probably one of my best clapbacks in my career, but we were loading these giant walls onto a freight truck, and I was flux core welding them to tubing across the bottom, and it was some wild welding. Like I was standing on one leg, like leaning down to try to fit between these walls, and my crew is building wood frames over the top, so when it vibrates, it at least vibrates together. And this really big, burly, like Russian freight driver is like, honey, your welds are gonna break. Like those aren't gonna make it on the highway. And I was like, all right, like bet, like I'll see you in North Carolina on the install site. Like you let me know. And then we get there and I'm like, yeah, so I need a cutoff disc, right? Like none of these broke. He was like, no, they didn't. They stayed. And it's like I just don't think people always understand like the difference of alloys. Like I think if I had welded those in hardwire, sure, maybe they would have cracked with that amount of vibration, but like I was welding
Right.
that with like I think it was like 80T core ultra, like wild shit, like
Yeah.
stuff that is has a crazy tensile strength.
Some
And so
people
like
just can't comprehend
they just don't
how
get it.
strong welds can be.
Yeah. And particularly like even like when they're laid correctly, like no porosity, no slag inclusions, like that shit was fire. And I knew it was. And so it was really
Literally.
cool to get on site and just look at this man and be like, yeah, so did they break? Didn't really look like they did.
I love that. I love welding, especially. I just feel like there are so many opportunities and things that you can do with it outside of work that people don't traditionally think of. Like one
Totally.
person who I look up to a lot is Jen Phillips. She makes
I think I know who
welded
that is. Yeah, yeah.
sculptures. They are absolutely beautiful. She's done like
Totally.
rams. She just did one of Donald Trump, which like personally he's not like my favorite person, but I do respect her art a lot and
Yeah.
like outstanding. Pretty much like mostly with Mig and yeah.
Yeah. No, for sure. It's really cool. It's really, really cool.
Yeah, and then, like, for you, it's pretty much getting you a whole trip out to Burning Man. For me, welding got me sent out to a TV show out in Texas, like, trip paid for. So there's just so many opportunities with it, especially if you're artistic like you are,
Yeah.
and I am too. I always had an interest in the arts. So I feel like you can tie them together very easily.
For sure. And that's something
Yeah.
that I noticed as a common theme in like a lot of your other episodes of girls being like, this introduced me to an artistic craft, or I was drawn to this because I've always wanted to make art with my hands. And so I do think, and I do think there's a lot to say about, and I say this, from my chest, like I think female welders have a bigger attention to detail than a lot of male welders. And there is like a huge craft in that, like
Yeah.
just the consistency of the weld and the way it's laid. Like you don't see anybody in my shop cutting corners and running something downhill that should never be downhill, you know what I mean? And so
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I just mean like and my shop is getting significantly more legitimized in the sense that like we are starting out our welders, we are having weld tests done because our shit is now getting so big that it's a liability if
Yeah.
you don't. And so, and my shop lead, the one who is also my instructor, she is just she's my idol, like hardcore. Just so smart, and is training to be a CWI soon. So just an incredible resource to have.
Really like that. And I think that's a good kind of main subject for this episode is how the arts and everything can tie into the trades. Because just another example, a woman named Crystal I had on the podcast, Carpentry by Crystal,
Hmm.
with wood. She makes
Yeah,
beautiful art
yeah.
too.
I follow her on Instagram too. Yeah, she's really great.
Yeah, and she, like, does, like, maintenance, she knows how to do everything, super
Hmm.
impressive. And then also, a super well-known influencer, her name is Haley Rose, that girl with the hearse. She is, like,
Yeah, yeah,
she's goth and, like, has a hearse,
yeah.
but she is a welder, and they build theater furniture and, like,
Oh,
sets
that's
and
cool.
props and stuff.
Yeah,
So it's like, that's things that you would never even like, traditionally, a welder would never like, your traditional male welder is probably not
yeah.
gonna be like, "I wanna weld and build theater sets," and
No, totally. And that's honestly something that, like, again, I've never experienced it from females in blue collar jobs, but like male iron workers, structural steel welders, pipe fitters are all like, you're not a real blue collar worker. Like, you're just building art. You're not in the field. And it's like, okay, I know I have the luxury of like the shit I weld is clean, but like I am out in the field. I install those pieces. And two, I'm going to be so real. Like, and I have no shade by saying this because like I do fully respect what all of those welders do in the field. It's more of like, okay, you're discrediting me and I don't really understand why, because in a lot of those field jobs, you're welding the same weld and the same process every single day. I'm getting like, a new art piece like every 3 months, and that could be, going from aluminum TIG to carbon Core 10 flux. And it's like,
yeah.
I don't think a lot of you could lay a bead that proficiently in that many processes in that many positions and like just like know how to do it on top of like some of the positions I've had to learn to weld in are absolutely insane. Like there was this one project that I had to be on a railing of a scissor lift. That's the other thing. And like I know my shop does their best with safety. Like we all have our hard hat trainings, we all do OSHA 10s, and like we wear fall lines and stuff when we're in the air. But like the reality is we're not on a classic pipe structure. We're not on a classic like home framing. Like we're on an art structure. And so it could be insanely oddly shaped. And so like to get
Yeah.
to weird places, what we do is not always OSHA friendly. And so like this one time I was on the railing of a scissor lift, had hooked my feet under because I was on the top railing. And so I hooked my feet under the second railing and like leaned all the way back, had to fit into this hole, had to pass my hood over the sculpture to then weld this stainless open root above my head. And it's like,
Right.
I think that's probably just as hard as like, what a pipe fitter is doing out in the field. So like I just don't it's hard again, never experienced it from a female welder, but like a lot of male welders have like a lot to say of like
Right.
you couldn't survive on a field gig or you couldn't do this. And it's like, well, I don't really think you could succeed in what I do either, to be honest with you.
And most of them couldn't because
Yeah.
what you're talking about basically and, like, pipe welders do similar because basically, like, G restricted welds when you have
Hmm.
because 'cause I'm sure, like, with your art, it's not always right there in the open, like you
No.
said, you have to get your arms around all kinds of crap and tube welders, and I totally that no, that shit is not easy, you have to learn
No.
how to freehand weld
Yeah.
sometimes, like
Yeah, or learn how to like weld with your non-dominant hand because that has the, best view of what you're trying to do. And
yeah.
like on this one piece, we had to weld inside it, and it was so something that like I could only fit my left shoulder and like this side of my head in. And so it was like a giant flux core welded just like one-handed, and the whole thing is preheated to like 400 degrees. And so you're like in it, sweating. My head is stuck. I'm trying to weld with my left hand. And yeah, so I think the conditions in my shop are not a normal production shop in any
I'm
way.
impressed I'm impressed that you guys actually preheat stuff because
We have to. Like
We
some of that
don't
shit is so
unless
thick.
I'm doing, like, a weld test on, like, a super coupon
Hmm.
that's, like, this thick, then I don't,
Yeah,
but
no,
yeah,
with
like
our like massive bases, like we have
yeah,
to. And like it's a long process because you got to get the entire area up to like I think 400 and something degrees. It needs to stay in that temperature for the whole
mhm,
time. And then on top of it, you have to stay with it and step it down as it cools. Like you can't just let it cool by itself because you run the risk of it like getting really too hot and then it immediately cools off. And so it runs the risk of getting really brittle and like pulling the weld apart and putting significantly more stress on something that's bonding together like that. And
yeah.
so like like my biggest accomplishment with the shop I work right now is I led the production of a 53-foot sculpture. It weighed 18,000 pounds. I welded the base of it. Like it was badass.
So how do y'all transport that? Do you do it in pieces and then weld it together on site, or is it normally all built and then transported and put up?
It's a little bit of both. And so with that piece in particular, it was mostly shipped on like one big piece, giant freight truck. It was a piece of big tubing on the inside, and then it had layers around the outside that kind of twisted around. And it started as a circle and then slowly went up into a hexagon shape. And then as it twisted around, those hexagon edges began to kind of flatten out. So the very, very top layer was a triangle. And so it
Wow.
has like this twisted, almost illusion. And with that, two of the layers, I had to hand cut them apart and custom fab brackets to be able to put them back together on site because we had two crane picks that were welded and put onto the tube. And so it was picked by two cranes. This was unfortunately, I didn't get to go to this install because I tore my ACL last year and it was so sad. I was like, I couldn't believe I missed it. I was like, it's my baby and she's standing because we built it horizontal in the shop. And so on site was the very first time she went vertical and like felt gravity for real. And so I'm sad I didn't get to see it. But I did get the video and it was a crazy crane pick. It was two different cranes. And so you have the big boy like lifting the two pick points on the pipe kind of coming up like this. And then you have a little one picking up the bottom. So as it comes up, it can be long vertical. And so that one, those two layers that were cut apart, my crew members had to be in like big boom lifts and put them back up. And they were so sweet. They were like the craftsmanship and the finish work on those is like amazing. It went together seamless. And so it was really great to hear that from my team because like again, going back to like blue collar men kind of judging the kind of welding I do, it's just like I don't think you could ever make something look pristine the way I do because like most welders just weld, and like for my
Mhm.
job, some of the magic is welding it and then making it look like it was never welded
Yeah.
and like kind of understanding, how much of the weld can you take away before it becomes a weak point and things like that that I don't think is like common education for infrastructure welding because you never have to finish a weld to that quality. And so it's just a little bit different there too.
Yeah, the only time I do is on, like, a handrail pretty much,
Hmm.
but also, like, there's been, like, some stainless tanks that we do have to, like, completely buff out and they die pin
Yeah.
it, so if you have, like, any pits or
Little
anything
hairline cracks. Yeah, it totally
yeah,
shows
but
everything.
that's only when we get into, like, the sanitary or the pharmaceutical type jobs,
That
but
makes sense.
that's really cool. I would again, you just never would think about, like, with welding and stuff, like,
Hmm.
jobs like that, so the opportunities are really endless.
Totally.
So
Yeah.
with a big scale project like that, is it something that is, like, designed by an engineer, or do you all collaborate and design it?
So there's like a couple different ways clients can go. And so our clients are technically like the artists themselves. And so an artist
Mhm.
will apply to a call for art. Their proposal is accepted. They get the grant from the city or the board, whoever is funding it, and then they come to us and they can come. We have a design team upstairs in my shop and we work with I think we're on Rhino 8 is the 3D modeling program we use. And so they can come to us with something as like vague as like hand drawn sketches. And then my design team will come up with a 3D model, a cut file, and we'll get it. We have an engineer. I think he's a contract worker because he doesn't work in the office with us, but we'll send him everything and he'll spec it out. And then sometimes our shop lead will look at the engineered weld specs and be like, this ain't enough. Like we're gonna do more than this. This seems a little, iffy. So we'll usually, I guess the technical term is we'll usually overweld for safety just to like make sure that it can withstand things. Because also you can never really control the way people interact with public art, like you would hope somebody wouldn't go climb all over that, but like you don't know.
Yeah, you
And
never
so it's
know.
yeah, so it's like better to be safe than sorry. But some people do come to us with like full-blown designs, and like sometimes they'll even have their own engineer involved, which can be a little frustrating for the fab team. Like one time we had this aluminum project and they spec'd out like 6061 aluminum with 5356 filler, and it was like the worst aluminum I've ever welded in my life. I was like, why are we not using 4043 and 4043? Like, what's what's the reasoning here? Because 4043 can be like butter, and this shit is like I got this real brittle base metal and this filler rod that does not want to combine with it. And like, don't get me wrong, aluminum is not my specialty in any way. Like, I could
Me
do it.
either.
I just learned aluminum TIG overhead though. That felt really good to get. But like it's not my specialty. And those two engineer alloy call outs, the whole shop was like, I hate welding this. Like I hate this. And that's like one thing that I do really, really love is the crew of people I work with is like we have a good time.
Yeah.
Like we laugh, we look out for one another, we teach each other, like I said before, with some of the shit that we end up having to do on installs, it's really, really nice to feel confident in your coworkers. Like everyone is safe, everyone is taking care of each other, like nobody's dropping tools on each other's head and things like that. And for the
Yes.
most part, everyone is like there to work, because like in the very, very first shop I worked in, the other apprentice who was with me was just a dick. Like he used to arc slash me on purpose, and I was like, dude, why? Because I can weld better than you, you need to blind me, like whatever.
Probably jealous.
Like maybe if you can't
Probably.
see, your shit will suck.
Literally. And going back to what you said about having fun at work with your coworkers, if you're not and it's a toxic, not enjoyable work environment, I'm sorry, but you need to find somewhere else to work because at the end of the day, like me and my coworkers, we have fun, we joke around.
Yeah.
But like you said, we are all there to work and
Hmm.
we do shit as safe as possible. We all want to go home at the end of the day.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
it makes the days go by faster if you can actually have fun and
Hmm.
enjoy your job and your coworkers,
Yeah. And I really appreciate too that like everyone does have something to teach one another. Like
Yeah.
we have one welder who is really, really good at aluminum. He used to weld on like aluminum boats for like a government contract job. So like if there's ever a spool gun project, he's the go-to. And then we have another one who worked on like custom stainless hoods. And so he has a lot, and he just has great building and rigging knowledge. Our company actually just paid for him to get his crane test and operator's license so he can now operate our spider crane too. So like everyone kind of has like different skills that we bring to the table because we do have some non-welding fabricators that have carpentry skills because not every project that comes through my shop is always metal. And like we had an install out in Pittsburgh that was like it was something like over 500 antique glass bottles, and we had to hand drill all of them on site and then hang them from cables in the ceiling. And so we just do all kinds of stuff. And then we do all of our own paint. Like we have a top coat paint team. So some of our crew is just paint team. And then we also do things with like fiberglass with stainless steel armatures on the inside. And so it's like very a wide range of the materials you get to touch. I personally hate wood with like a passion. I just find that like with metal, you cut something wrong or, your weld isn't as great as you want it to be. You can grind it out, you can recut it, you can weld it back together, and it's like for the most part still usable unless you've like completely mutilated it.
Yeah.
But with wood, it's like if you make a wrong cut, it's like I need a new piece. Or if like a board splits, I need a new board. And to me, that's just too breakable, I guess.
Yeah. I learned that while I was doing my bathroom because Yeah, I'm also used to working with metal and learning to, like, frame stuff up with 2 by
Hmm.
4s and keep it square and not fucked up.
Yeah.
It's actually harder than it looks, like,
No, I totally agree. I
you would
totally
not think that
agree.
it's hard, but why is it so hard? Somebody
Yeah.
please tell me.
No, for real, for real. Me and one of my coworkers actually last night was joking about how like we need to find the blue collar girlies in Denver and just like get a team. Like I need an HVAC, I need an electrician, I need a plumber, I need a carpenter, and then I got my welders. So like together we could all inspect each other's houses. We could all like we could take over the whole world. So it's definitely something that I want to like look into.
Doing my bathroom and, like, I'm pretty comfortable attempting to do everything on my own with, like, maybe a hand here or there,
Hmm.
other than the electrical, and I want to, like, find a woman electrician, which you would think with my platform I could, but why is it so damn hard? Because I've posted, like, a few
Totally.
times now trying to find a woman electrician in Michigan, and I just can't, so
Yeah,
I'm
no,
not gonna give up.
no,
If
she
you're a
has to
woman
exist.
electrician in Michigan and you're listening to this, come rewire my bathroom. Thanks. I'll pay you. I'm not asking you to do it for free.
Yeah.
I just want it
No,
to be an
totally.
all-woman project.
No, I agree. And also like living by yourself, like allowing strange handyman into your house when you're alone,
You get me. You get me.
not my
Yeah.
thing, really. Like I like at least you have two dogs. I don't even have a dog right now, you know?
But my dogs don't like men. That's the thing. Like,
No.
they don't even like the men that I, like, want to come in my house.
Yeah, no. I get it. I mean, I'm pretty skeptical myself, so I get
I know.
it.
They can probably see my vibes. They're like, "We don't need she doesn't even know if she likes you. Why would we
Yeah,
like you?"
yeah, no, she's on the fence. Yeah, no, and that's one thing that I will say that I've also noticed because like I found welding in 2017. I went to trade school in 2021. I started welding professionally and like hardcore structurally in 2022, as I said. But like since then, dating as a like real blue collar laborer is hard. Men, like it's such a harsh spectrum split. Like they either like it so much that it's like borderline fetishized, or they're so emasculated by it that like they don't even want to sit across from me at the dinner table anymore. Like, you know how to use more power tools than me? Damn, my balls just got like sucked back into my body.
I took everything job related off of my dating profiles, like, a few weeks ago on like, I
Okay, you'll have to
because
let me
I'm
know
like, "Is
how the
that my
social experience
problem?"
goes.
Yeah, I'm like, "Is that my problem? Is that why this is so hard? I don't understand." So we're trying it for science. I'm just
Yeah,
not
no, let me
I'm gonna
know.
be like, "I'm unemployed. I need a man to take care of me."
Yeah, I need a provider. But I also like, I don't need anybody with that kind of fragile masculinity in my life,
Yeah,
dude.
that's
Like,
literally that's I know
if
that's
you're
right.
threatened by what I can do, like there was one time I was on this date and he was like, you know how to cook? And I was like, why? You know how to build a house? Like, we talking gender stereotypes right now? Like, can you? 'Cause you don't look like somebody who even knows how to use a hand drill, if I'm being real.
Yeah. It is a struggle. It is.
I never, like, that's something I never contemplated, choosing the trades. And then you get here and you're like, whoa, I guess we're still in
Crazy
like the
though.
50s or something.
I have a lot of friends, or I guess like tradeswomen acquaintances off the internet that I consider my friends that
Mhm.
I mean, they're married and stuff or have
Yeah,
like boyfriends. So you really just have to find like a man that's secure in who he is and who you
yeah.
are, but it's so like few and far between anymore,
Totally.
you
And
know?
like, and honestly, articles have been written about the Denver dating scene. Like, it's like notoriously bad here. I mean, I don't know. Like, I kind of like this is an interesting thing that like girlfriends and I have talked about of like maybe it's because like a lot of people come to Colorado to find themselves. And so there's like a weird amount of like, not necessarily like displaced people, but like people who are searching for something outside of themselves. And so it like makes, I think, finding a whole ass, like emotionally balanced, secure man maybe a little bit harder.
That's interesting because I feel like the dating scene here is horrible and I've always wanted to move to Colorado. Like,
I can't
not
sell
even
it to you by the dating scene, but Colorado's dope. I highly recommend, like for a
I
lot of
love
reasons
it
I
out
love.
there. It's
Yeah.
like I cry every time I, like, first get out there and see the
Hmm.
mountains. It's
Yeah.
literally, like, one of my favorite places on earth.
Have you ever been to southern Colorado, like Durango and the San Juan Mountains?
I've been to like Mesa Verde National Park and stuff
Okay,
down
cool.
there. So,
Nice.
yeah. I I used to go out to Colorado Springs a lot because I had family there, but then I like wouldn't want to like hang out with the family. So I'd be like, "Bye, I'm going to Mesa Verde National Park." And then I'd
Hell
go on
yeah.
like an 8-hour drive through the mountains. Like you look up Scary Mountain Overpass and literally the
Hmm.
roads I was going on like come
Yeah.
up. I'm like,
Hmm.
hell yeah. In my Grand Prix back when I was like 18 or 19.
Yeah.
But I went out last year. I was supposed to go out this year, but like my health has been shitty, so I'm like kind of waiting to travel to see if I feel better. So
I'm sorry, that sucks.
it does suck, but hopefully I get better. But at least I have an answer because I've been having like problems for 4 years. And I would try and tell my doctor, and she would just be like, "You sound crazy. You sound manic right now." And she literally gaslit me to the point that I'm like, maybe I just am crazy. It's all in my head.
Yeah.
Like, finally, I get a new doctor, and she's like, "This doesn't sound unreasonable to me." And I'm like,
Yeah.
what? Like you actually believe me? And then like she sends me for an MRI and sure enough like my brain is too big for my skull. So causing all these like
Yeah.
crazy
No, that
neurological
sucks.
yeah,
And
it's
like to
like
have a health ailment while working a manual labor job is like one of the worst things.
it is
It's
literally the
like
worst.
absolutely sucks.
I
'Cause
have
like
a
my
like a
knee is still fucked
newfound
up. Yeah. Like,
But so my thing was like I was low key feeling like guilty for a while because I was like, is it the trades ruining my body? And then like here I am encouraging people to join trades, but like
mhm,
no, it's not the trades. Like
no.
I was born with a problem that no one ever like took serious or cared to
And I
investigate.
unfortunately think like, sort of on topic of like, we're talking about women's experience in the trades, but I mean, there's a huge discussion to be had about women's experience in the medical field. Like, we weren't included in health research studies of diseases until the friggin' 90s. Okay. That was
Yeah.
only 30 years ago. And like, I feel like a lot of time women go into the doctor or their primary care or even some sort of specialist complaining of something. And it's like, well, maybe it's related to PMS. Or maybe you're hormonal, or maybe you have an
Are you
iron
pregnant?
deficiency.
I'm like, bitch,
You think I
if I'm
wouldn't know?
pregnant, I'm 7 months pregnant. We got baby Jesus up in this motherfucker. And they're
Yeah,
like, "Well, we need to make you take a pregnancy test to like make sure." I'm like, "Okay, you don't trust me. I don't trust you either anymore at this point."
yeah,
Literally,
no,
literally
for real.
after being ignored for 4 years. I do
Yeah,
trust my doctor now at least cuz she listened to me, but we'll see.
yeah,
Ew.
no, that's incredibly frustrating. I had like a very, definitely not like to the same extent as like a lifetime kind of sentence, like with your brain size. That's something unfortunately that you'll probably have to deal with forever, and that sucks, and I'm sorry. But I hope maybe like you can advocate for things like that, and maybe like there are some sort of trial treatments you could try to help manage it. But with my ACL injury, so I tore it in February of last year. I had my first reconstruction surgery in May. What's so crazy and why, I'm gonna say this with my chest, girls are tougher than boys. Like, I worked my manual labor job with a completely torn ACL for 2 months before I was like, maybe something's wrong, where like most athletes who tear their ACL on the field don't get up.
Yeah,
And I was going to
literally.
work. But anyway, I had my first surgery, and a few months later, I was like, something's not right. Like, this doesn't feel right. It still feels weird. Like, I'm still having like weird swelling, painful symptoms. And my doctor, like, I brought that to his attention in July. He didn't get me an MRI until November. And lo and behold, the graft is falling out of my femur again. So I basically like retore my ACL. And what sucks is that new ACL was a piece of my own quad tendon. I did like my own body harvest to fix it. And so the surgery that I had like 6 weeks ago was to take out the bad graft and to do bone grafts in the tunnels that were drilled in my tibia and femur and this is also why like fabrication is so funny, because like those tunnels are only supposed to be 9 millimeters in size, and they had enlarged to 17. And so when I had to tell my employer, like, hey, I have to be out of work again, like I need another knee surgery, and I explained the situation, like all three of them were like, 9 millimeters to 17 millimeters is completely out of tolerance. Like, we get it. Like, that's wrong. And so that's like the other thing that I will say has been incredibly amazing about my company is because Colorado is not Will State. And so as
Mhm.
a manual labor with a knee injury, like, they could have really let me go and been like, your production rates are gonna just think we can't send you on job sites anymore because you're a workers' comp liability. And rather than doing any of that, they fully supported me and were like, here's how you can get family medical leave for these surgeries. Like, we're gonna keep your benefits and your employment. And they even, were like really sweet and in the sense we're like, we think you're a really talented fabricator and we want you here. And so like we're gonna support you through this. And I think that also, says a lot about like how important skilled laborers are. Like you have leverage in employment if you are incredibly skilled at what you do. Like people are gonna need you. Like I watched this video, I think it was even just yesterday on Instagram, and it was like this foreman being like, I tell all my guys, like, don't fuck with the welder. Like the welder doesn't need this job. Like this job needs them. So like leave them alone. Let them do what they need to do.
Yeah.
So I think that, like I think a lot of people are scared about the direction of our country, the direction of our economy, and like go to the trades. Like it's job security in like a lot of different fields. You know what I mean? Like it's not just on oil rigs and things like that. Which by the way, women in the trades, speaking about oil rigs, I applaud everyone who wants to go out there, but just be really, really safe. I've been doing, because I've been kind of curious of like what other welding jobs make in terms of like salary. And so I've been doing a lot of just exploring on different kinds of jobs. But some of the articles that have been coming up is just the amount of skyrocketing sexual assault percentages on things like oil rigs and like big field jobs like that. And so just like do your research, like maybe make sure there's someone in a position of power in like the HR department or like the safety department that you like have a touchstone, because like that just breaks my heart that like so many women are, well, not so many, but like the few who go out to those oil rigs are not only faced with like sexism, but also like genuine assault, genuinely like your well-being is in danger. And that's just so savage to me, like it's 2025. Like just because you're isolated on an oil rig doesn't mean, the laws of society are thrown to the wind, but like the numbers kind of say otherwise.
Yeah.
And so that's like something that definitely still kind of bums me out about the women entering trades is like we do have to really do research on who we're going to work for, who are the kind of people who work there, what are the kind of contractors they bring in. And yeah, it's a bummer, but at the same time, I guess like the flip side of that coin is women are more educated and prepared for the fields they enter and are like have more strategies on how to deal with that. The more we talk about it and the more we bring awareness to it. And so that's why I do think like something like this podcast is so important for women entering the trades is like we all need to, scream about these issues because if we don't, like how are they ever going to change?
Exactly. And adding on to that, like, unfortunately, and it makes me like I've been sad the last few days too because so Miss Weld, a good friend of mine who's like a welding content creator, she's from Texas and she's now had a lot of women reach out to her because they go to welding schools and end up getting taken advantage of and sexually harassed or assaulted when they're trying to get an
Yeah,
education.
no, that's sucks.
That and another one of the anonymous stories that I'm going to share here shortly. Same deal, a girl wanting to get an education, and she wasn't the only one at this particular school in a different state. So it's something, and what really bothers me is that I literally had to leave a women's group yesterday because this girl's like, well, feminism isn't important. Women are equal. We're treated equal, blah, 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 blah. I'm a girl's girl, and I'm like, you're not a girl's girl if you don't think feminism is important. Like,
Yeah,
and we tried to educate her and she started being homophobic, a bigot, and I was like, I'm not going to be
yeah,
associated with a group like this because I want to support everyone here and we're all
totally.
allowed to have our own opinions, but I don't want to
But to me,
bring
that's almost like confirmation bias. Like you're seeing what you want to see, like you're not acknowledging what's going on
It
around
doesn't make
you.
sense. It literally
Yeah, no,
doesn't
like
make
there are
sense.
literally states that are like ripping reproductive rights from women as we speak. But you're gonna tell me I have the same rights as a man? Like, okay.
Yeah, 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 but she's one of those
Nobody's
people that thinks reproductive rights aren't important for some reason, so you can't change
okay.
their mind and,
No.
everyone's
But like,
entitled to
okay,
their own opinion, but
but what if something absolutely terrifying happens to you? Like not even, a pregnancy due to an assault, but what about like an ectopic pregnancy that's gonna kill you?
yeah, absolutely.
And you don't have, access to the medical care that can save you because doctors are losing their licenses by saving women over a child, an unborn child.
I don't know how people can even
I
argue
just
in
don't
that
know.
circumstance. It's like they're
Yeah.
uneducated and they refuse to even try to be educated in that
It's
situation, you
almost
know
like
what I mean?
hanging on to like ignorance is bliss in like a really, really toxic way. You're like, well, my rights have never really been impacted in my life, so it's not happening anywhere. And then also just look at like yes, we're all in the United States and yes, we're in a little bit of a rough place right now. Like I think that's really fair to say. But, look at other countries, like particularly Arab countries, like women don't have any rights there. Like they're not even really allowed to show skin with the hijabs and like, can only show their eyes to people who are not their husband.
I have brought that up before because I have brought up how, like, feminism and women's rights and women's equality is important and it's not a battle
Yeah.
that's over yet. And they're like, "Yes, it is." I'm like, "What about globally? Think on a global scale." And they're like, "Well, why are you worried about other countries? Like, we're Americans. That's not our problem." I'm like, "I'm not saying that we need to go over there and spend all our money and fix it. I'm just saying that it's obviously women do not have equal rights globally, and you cannot argue with that. Like, it's
That
inarguable.
I 100% agree with you. Like it's just like even and if you look at American history, it's like women weren't allowed to like have bank accounts or own homes
50
or
1974 was the Equal Opportunity Credit Act, which gave women the right to have their own bank accounts, the right to get a mortgage in their name. That was 51 years ago. That's our grandmas. So, like, your grandma couldn't, if her relative died, she couldn't even get her relative's property in her name
no.
because she was a
Yeah.
woman.
Yeah. And like my
Only
own
in the
mom is
last 100 years.
no, no. And my own mom is 66, so like that law came into play when my mom was a little girl.
Mhm.
And so it's like you can't tell me that like I just know, dude, like it's not the same. And going back to like kind of connecting all of that back to the topic of like women in the trades, it's like I know you've mentioned in some of your episodes a lot of job sites require two different kinds of bathrooms because like when do men and women share bathrooms anywhere else in the world? Like there's always two and sometimes, if you're in a politically strict collect state, three bathrooms. And so like why are women sharing bathrooms on job sites? And so like with my crew and the installs we do, like we very, very rarely get our own porta johns because we're the only contracted crew on site who usually has women. And so they're like, oh, well, we didn't know you were all girls. And it's like, okay, well, that's fine, but like your shit's gross.
If it's a smaller job and, like, there's no other women and it's only my company, because 'cause I'm the only woman at my company,
Hmm.
and sometimes, like, if I'm not gonna be at a job for a long time, I'll be like, "Whatever, I'll just go at break and use, like," or I have gotten really good at squatting over a porta john, like, climbing up on the seat and squat.
Yeah, no, like I don't touch it. I don't touch it. Like, there's a
So if
magic to
I
it.
have to, I
It's like
do.
levitating.
But I'm very blessed. I have been working municipal, like, city government jobs and stuff, and they all have women's bathrooms on site, and they really
Hell
like our
yeah.
company, so
That's
and I've
great.
never given them a reason to not let me use the bathroom, so
Yeah. No, that's really nice.
yeah, so I've
That
been
definitely
blessed.
makes a difference.
At my shop, we have our own women's bathroom, but I have caught the guys, like, going in there before because 'cause I'm not normally there, and I
Hmm.
feel like they only have, like, 3 stalls, and we have quite a few employees, so I feel like they low key go in there, but someone else
Yeah.
cleans it. I'm not in there enough to care, you know?
Yeah.
But
No, at
whatever.
at our shop we have like unisex bathrooms, like they're just like a one room thing, and so everyone just uses the same thing. But again, like the guys on my crew are special. Like they're not the assholes. They're really nice and like
Yeah.
don't treat you any differently because you're a woman, like actually like because my specialty with my shop right now, I'd say is carbon flux is what I'm best at. And so it's nice to see like when other fabricators recognize what you bring to the table and like ask you about like, oh, how did you do that? Or like, what were your settings? And, do you have suggestions on this position? And so it's just really cool.
Yeah. Hell yeah. It does
Mhm.
feel good to be the best at something and like get
Yeah,
talked up.
yeah,
Hell
just a
yeah.
little bit.
So you kind of shared what your biggest success at your current shop was. Would you say that that was like your biggest success in your entire career so far?
I think so. I think that 53-foot sculpture definitely trumped everything else because it was crazy. And like I said, all of those, like the way it twisted from a hexagon to a triangle, like all of those
Yeah.
edges of those plates we had to finish in the shop ourselves. And like we're finishing with levels, like making sure everything is like perfectly in tune to the next step. And like I led the production of that. And so I was like writing the daily crew emails on being like, okay, to hit our paint date, we got to get this, and this done. And managing what layers we're going to paint when, what layers we're going to blasting. And so that was just like a really, really cool experience.
Yeah.
I think my second after that was probably when I passed my first cert test, like my first bend test. I was like, oh my God, that's amazing.
It's a good feeling, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah,
Did
no,
you
it was
fail
wicked.
any?
No, I've
I
never
did.
failed a cert test. I have had a weld break though. And so that's kind of like failing in my
Yeah.
opinion. And it was what it was so you're gonna laugh. So flex core carbon is like but flex core stainless, that shit I'm still figuring out. I can do it in a decent number of positions, but particularly like 5G from overhead to vertical or like overhead in general with that stainless flux that we have, I haven't figured it out yet. And there's only 3 welders in my shop who have, and they had significantly more time with it than I did, because they used it on this one project. And so I'll get it eventually, but I stainless fluxed these pipes because they were cut too short and then we had to send it out to get rolled. And unfortunately it broke in the roller. And so that was the only time one of my welds has broken. And I know exactly what went wrong. Like I didn't open the root wide enough. Like I should have made more of a gap there.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I kind of had misinformation because I was like, well, I shouldn't open any wider than this, right? Because flux really shouldn't do open roots. And so what I thought, like I think the way that should have been done is I think it should have been a TIG root and then like a flux cap. And I think it probably would have been fine rather than like a flux with a tiny gap all the
Yeah.
way. So that was the only time I was like a little bit like, damn, that sucks. But hey, one broken weld in how long I've been welding, that's pretty good. Pretty good track record.
When I was learning to weld, they just let me do like test after test to basically be like, as soon as she's ready, like ship her out,
Oh
basically.
yeah,
And so, like, the first couple, none of them broke. None of my bend tests broke, but they would have like a little bit of
like a hairline
crack.
crack or like an
Yeah, cracks
inclusion
and
kind of
shit.
thing.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
was too much. But once I finally passed, and then same with stick. I think I failed my first stick 6G test, and then my second one, my inspector bet me $20 that I wouldn't pass. So I was like out for blood, and I definitely
Yeah.
passed.
Yeah.
So
That's
it
awesome.
feels so good. It's
It
such a
feels
good
so
feeling.
good.
Yeah.
Are bend tests the only destructive tests you've done, or have you done like tinsel tests too, where they get ripped apart?
We only do bend tests.
Okay.
That's like our standard procedure because we do everything through like the American Welding Society, like our
Okay,
shop
cool.
does. So
Nice.
yeah, basically like it's this G super coupon bent, and then like for every process, literally stick, TIG, and MIG, which I'm like, we do not weld. We would never weld MIG's G. We do not MIG weld in the field. I've never flux core welded.
It's a
I've
lot
done
like stick.
huh?
It's a lot like stick,
Is
for
it? I
sure.
know that you
Yeah.
get like the crust on top.
Yeah, like the slag on top of it.
Yeah, you get
Yeah.
all the slag on top.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's two different kinds of fluxes. So you have like outer shield, so that's flux that can run with no glass, and then you have dual shield that can run with shield gas on it. But
Yeah.
they're the reason I say they're like stick is it's slow. Like stick is kind of a slow burn unless you're doing like 60-10 with the flash freeze
Yeah.
motion. But
Yep.
70-18 is like slow as shit in my opinion.
It is. No, it is. Stick welding is my least favorite, probably because I'm the least best at it.
Okay,
TIG
that's
is
fair.
definitely my specialty.
Yeah,
Like, yeah.
I love TIG. I think I have probably the most experience with TIG, but to be honest, I don't know if I have a favorite process, but I definitely prefer working on carbon than anything
Yeah.
else. Like finish work on stainless is the worst because like as you grind, it gets hot, so it gets more brittle, so it gets harder to grind, and then on top of it, you have to kind of account for the fact that when stainless fully cools again, it will usually sink. And so like you can't take away too much of that material because rather than finishing to like a flat plane, you might have like a little swoopy swoop. So I kind of
Yeah.
hate stainless. We do a lot of
Yeah.
stainless though, so you get used to it, but it's
It
not like what
depends
I
for
would
me.
choose.
I like thick stainless, like Schedule 40 with
Hmm.
flanges that you don't have to purge or anything.
Yeah.
Love that. But like once you get down to the thin shit, and I mean I can do it. I do like it, but it's not like my favorite. It just takes
No.
more time, like with all the especially pipe and all the purging, and you gotta wait for your purge to get down just right and make sure you're not like pushing too much argon.
Hmm.
There's just like too much that can go wrong sometimes.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of variables.
I love socket welds, so those are nice because you don't have to worry about that, and you just get all the pretty colors.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
totally.
Was there anything else that you wanted to share for your story, or if you could give one piece of advice maybe to a woman wanting to join the trades, what would that be?
I think my biggest piece of advice is educate yourself, but also take the safety seriously. And
Mhm.
like a lot of what we do is unsafe, and there are always opportunities to get hurt. And like, PPE gear is really important. Like a lot of the stuff we breathe in and are around is not something somebody should be breathing in 10 hours a day for 5 days a week. Like it's not super sustainable. And I would also, and this is probably something that is like very, very difficult to do, but I would try to find mentors, not only mentors that will like teach you everything you know, but mentors that will give you the tools to navigate the trades as a woman and like know what that looks like and like what the proper ways to protect yourself but also advocate for yourself and your skills. And also, I mean, I guess I have one more, is like just don't let imposter syndrome take over your life. Like if you had asked me when I was 20 just starting to weld, like if I was doing the stuff I'm doing now, I'd be like, no way. Like there's no way I could do that. Like I didn't even feel comfortable with holding an angle grinder in just my left hand. You know what I mean? And now I'm like using a cutoff disc one-handed and it's like well, not safe. You probably shouldn't do that. But like, but it's just like fake it till you make it. And like really, you can do it. You can. And so try. And people are gonna have shit to say, but that's true for anything you do in life, really.
I feel like imposter syndrome is super common for us women in trades. I
Yeah.
literally had someone just message me yesterday and be like, I want to come on the podcast, but I have imposter syndrome. I'm like, so many of us do. Don't worry.
No, totally.
It's pretty common at this point.
Yeah, no, I would have to agree. It's definitely, we all feel it. And I think too, I think unfortunately our gender does play a role into that. Like from a very young age, society kind of drills into you that like certain positions are male dominated jobs or like that's something only a man should do. And like,
Yeah.
you don't have a right to be there, but it's like we have a right to be anywhere. And I, pretty good at what I do.
Hell yeah. I love that. So, going back to what we were saying about educating yourself and looking out for sexual harassment and stuff, I have just a couple stories that were sent in that I want to share real quick that are going to be shared anonymously. So, this girl introduced herself and she says, I followed you for a while now, and you are really someone that I look up to. I'm 19 years old and I listen to your podcast, and I know you're always looking for people, but me being only 19, I don't think I have the stories that other girls do. So I saw your TikTok about posting my story anonymously and thought if you wanted to share it, you could. I graduated high school in December of 2023, and I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. My family had always been pretty handy and outside people, so I kind of put all the trades on the table and ended up applying to go to a trade school called, I'm not going to name them because I don't want to get sued, but it's in Wyoming.
Okay.
She got accepted on her birthday and was super excited. Finally, in April 2024, she left for school and she met all the girls at the school and got along with them really well, including the guys. Oh, everyone, including the guys, warned me about our lead instructor being a pervert, which I knew I was going to have to deal with those kind of men, especially in this field. School was going great, and then the instructor started getting a little touchy, and so the girls and I finally decided to file statements through the school. We were then put into a meeting room one by one with the said instructor and two other people. He picked through our statements and said we all lied, and of course, nobody believed us. After that, retaliation started happening towards us girls. The school was on our asses. I was told to leave and I would get 85% of my money back. And I told them no
They were
because
just trying to avoid a class action lawsuit, dude.
I was determined to finish it out considering it's only a 6-month program.
Hmm.
Eventually, after a while, a security guard came into our home, so I'm assuming they lived like on campus,
Hmm.
unannounced, and claimed that she smelled alcohol, and with no evidence but what the security guard said, we were all kicked out of housing and put on a 5-day suspension, which got me and 10 other people kicked out because we were only allowed to have 7 absences. I said my goodbye and left around a week later. Another one of our instructors who knew what was happening and had helped us posted on Facebook about the gross instructor and said a ton about the school and is now being sued for defamation. All the girls and I, along with some of the guys, are now having to testify against the school and the very instructor who traumatized all of us. I still owe the school a little less than $60,000 and I refuse to pay them because I wasn't even able to finish the program and was given a terrible experience, which is soon going to lead me to having to file for bankruptcy at 19 years old. I am now in a pipe fitter and welder apprenticeship and I love it and have been shown how it actually should be on a job site, which I generally highly recommend apprenticeships for
Hmm.
that reason. But also, do your research on schools. Miss Welds, that's her username. You can find her on social media. She teaches in Houston, Texas, and she is always willing if women, this is for women only because she gets like creepy stalker men. So sorry guys, this is not to you. But if a woman messages her, she will tell you what school she works at and you can go learn from her. But just do your research. Maybe talk to other women, find other women in your state that have went to welding schools in your state so you know that they're safe. Like,
Yeah. I think you can also do research on like who's on the board of that school. Is it all men who are in their 50s, or are there some like innovative women in those departments who could
yeah,
vouch or like side with you? That's wild. That's so disappointing. And I won't name the name so nobody gets sued for defamation, but I do know how defamation lawsuits work. Like it's a civil suit, and with all those kids testifying, I hope the school fails. Like I honestly hope they lose that case. And like being in Colorado, I do think I know which school in Wyoming that is.
so something shady that I don't like, and kind of how I ended up hearing about this in the first place, was they had reached out to me and sent me a bunch of merch. And as like an influencer, that happens. And I'm just like,
Hmm.
yeah, like send me merch. Like, I didn't know what was going on, and it wasn't until me and some and it was weird because it was all female influencers, and so I think they, like, tried to do a rebrand and make it look, like, super woman friendly, and but never making a statement, and just, like, that alone screams
What's
guilt
really
to me.
interesting about that is in Trump's first presidency, he revised the Title IX Act. And so the Title IX Act is basically what institutions are required to report to the public as stats. And so like it changed when I was at CU Boulder and I had an incident where I was assaulted on campus and they didn't legally have to report it to the student body because it was only a second degree assault, not a third degree assault. And that's how the Title IX Act changed. And so like the reality is that institution might not be required to make any sort of statement on what their sexual harassment rates are like or like how many claims are filed in a year. Like it's
That's
like that's why you need
sad.
to yeah, that's why you need to like find real people who went to these institutions because unfortunately the research you need to make a well-educated decision might not be required to be reported. And so it's just really, there's a lot of hoops you got to jump through, as a female identifying body in this world. Like it's hard. But again, I think with communities like this and like all of us discussing these issues, I think it's, way different than maybe women in the trades in the 90s and
Yeah.
even the early 2000s,
My
But that's
boss is
sad. That's a
old
sad
school.
story.
He
Yeah.
is old school, and he straight up says, like, if you would have told me 15, 20 years ago that I would be working alongside a woman and actually enjoy it, I would have never believed you. Because he's 60 years old, he's an old hippie, and it's just me and him. Like, we do
hmm
24-inch pipe, like, just
Oh
us.
yeah.
Maybe we'll have an apprentice sometimes, like, we are the fucking crew, and it's like, we go out to breakfast together, we shoot the shit, like, he's like a father figure to me, like, genuinely. It is, like, I don't know, you would never expect it, I guess, like,
Yeah.
there are good companies out there.
hmm
There's good safe ways to get an education. But if you
Yeah.
can find a woman who has directly been through that program or worked there
hmm
herself and has a good experience, that's always a good sign. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I definitely agree with that one for sure.
Yeah.
That was a ruthless story, though. I can't even imagine. And I also think it's kind of crazy that that weld program was that expensive. Because like my Emily Griffith 9-month program was only 10K. Granted, I only did welding one. I didn't take welding two. So together, still though, together that's only 20K, not 65. That's more than I paid a year to go at CU.
That's more. I literally went to college for like 3 years,
hmm
about 3 years, and I only had like 5 grand of debt, literally. But
Yeah.
through pipe fitting and my apprenticeship, like I learned to weld for free, like
Yeah.
stick, TIG, and MIG. Granted, I don't know like flux core. I've learned how to do
hmm
aluminum, but
hmm
I've learned the basics to the point now that I think if I went out and bought a machine and like did a lot of research and watched videos and practiced a lot, I think I could teach myself any form of welding. Like I pretty much
Totally.
already did with TIG and stick. That and
hmm
with working alongside other welders.
Yeah, no. I think also going back to like the financial piece of what you spend on your education, there's actually a lot of grants for women in the trades. There's a lot of
Yeah,
grants for women in welding. And so I think that's something that more people should look into. And also just like
definitely.
financial aid programs in general. Like if you have dependents and want to start a new career, you might qualify for more financial aid than somebody, who is only supporting themselves.
Yeah.
And you also get a tax credit. At least that's the way it is in Colorado. I don't know if it's a federal tax credit or not. But you get a tax credit for like continuing your learning post high school education.
I think that's true here in Michigan too.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So that's it definitely it's not as accessible as like we wish it was yet, but there are definitely avenues to get there and to be in a safe learning environment for sure.
Yeah, definitely. But
Yeah.
yeah, always do your research. And generally, I mean, looking at reviews and trying to find a real person is a great way to get a good idea of what you're getting yourself into. But with women, it can be so hard because we're
Yeah. It's
so
like how do
few
you
and far
know?
between.
Yeah.
Going back to what you said earlier, though, like getting it out there, getting more women into the trades, and I think with all the tradeswomen that have platforms and there's just gonna be more and more of us, I believe. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I definitely agree.
Well, was there anything else that you wanted to add today?
I don't think so. I think I covered everything on my docket. Yeah.
I think we had a really good chat. We yapped our little hearts out today.
Yeah, we certainly did. Yeah, no, it was great.
Yeah. Well, you guys can follow her at Spooky Dimes on Instagram. I know you have an X in there somewhere too. I think it's X.
I think it's x.spookydimes.x. Yeah. Yeah.
If you guys want to follow along with her adventures. And thank you all so much for listening. Make sure you're subscribed. And thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me. I had a blast. It was great.
Same, same. And yeah, we will see you all on the next episode. Thank you for tuning in.